Really, we're more talking about the afterlife. We're not going to get so much into the gods or goddesses. We have an optional activity where we're going to do more of that, and we'll talk about that afterwards. So please make sure you got your papers, your pens to be writing down. So like I said, Egypt's religion. Egypt was polytheistic. Who can remind me, what does polytheism mean? What does polytheism mean? What do you say, Alicia?
Belief in more than one God.
Exactamundo. So belief in more than one God. And the Egyptians had many, many, many gods. And you kind of saw that in the video they were going through. And the tough thing with the Egyptian gods and goddesses, and the video, I love Mr. Nicky's stuff because he has so much like wrapped into it. Like different villages, different cities and towns have different versions of the myths and different names for gods and goddesses. And then over time, these gods and goddesses change. Like Amun and Ra become Amun Ra, one god, combined from the two. But, you know, in the Old Kingdom, it was Ra with the creation. But then also with the creation, we have Geb and Neb and all of those doing it. So it's there's a lot going on. Now, these gods and goddesses are based on nature. So what they could see with the natural world, the things like the sun, the crops growing, the Nile flooding, earthquakes, all of them. You can't see what I'm doing, can you? Oops.
No, I just see by Mr. Nicky.
Nope, I
Oops. I totally blame Gus. Alicia, you need to be focusing, my dear. That's not appropriate. We're in class. You couldn't do that at school. So I apologize for not having my screen shared properly. Sorry. So like I was saying, polytheistic, many deities, animal forms. Here we see some of them right there. But like I said, this isn't even a small portion of the gods and goddesses. Now, one of the main things with Egyptians' religion is the idea of an afterlife. And they have the Ka and the Ba. The Ba is your personality. The Ka is your soul. That thing that makes divine, divine. You know, that makes Madeline Kate, Madeline Kate. They believe that you're more than just your body. That when you die, you're able to go and experience the afterlife. Yes, Alicia.
If I remember correctly, don't they also have something called a red, which is like your name?
Yeah. Now, the idea was that when you died, for your Ka to be able to enjoy the afterlife, it needed a place to stay, like a home base. Now, when we have Pharaoh Karachi, when she passes on, she's going to need her body embalmed, turned into a mummy. And the idea was that if it looked like her Ka would be able to find home. But also her Ka could go hang out in statues of Pharaoh Karachi. It could go hang out in, you know, images and all sorts of cool things like that. So the Ka would wander around enjoying the afterlife, but needed a home. Yes, Mariah, my dear.
Can I go to the restroom?
Of course, you don't have to ask. Now, Karachi, though, she was Pharaoh, queen. She had all of the power and all of these great things. She doesn't want to have a boring afterlife. So the Egyptians believe they need to give her funeral items so that she can enjoy her afterlife. So she's going to have stockpiles of all of her favorite foods. In the oldest of the Old Kingdom, she would actually have her servants sacrificed after she died and their bodies mummified so that they could be in there serving her for the afterlife. And later on, and for most of Egyptian history, what's going to happen is she's just going to have statues of her servants there. So when her servants die, then their Kas can go into those statues instead. There often will be a boat in her tomb so that she can go make her journey to the afterlife. And all of this is in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And what's really cool is that we have copies of this. So we know so much about the Egyptian beliefs with the afterlife and death and all of this stuff. It's really interesting. So we're going to start getting into this idea and mummification, which works out perfectly since we just started our chicken mummies yesterday. So here's an excerpt from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. What do we think is going on in this image? What do you think, Caleb?
They're like doing the process of mummifying their pharaoh or something.
Yeah. Yeah, right now it looks like the pharaoh is like wrapped, but they're going and putting items in. Very good. What did you want to add to that, Danielle?
Yeah, and like I see over there that there's like some food and like table where like all the servants are helping to wrap her.
Yeah. And it's actually probably going to be a him because we have the beard of a pharaoh. Although Hatshepsut was a female pharaoh, but she still actually wore the beard because this would actually be like a wooden thing and it would represent the position. All right. Yes, Aaron, sir?
There's also a tome picture with writing underneath.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And going over and we have talking about this whole process with the Osiris being our first pharaoh. Good. All right. Alicia, yes, dear.
You actually see Anubis, the jackal-headed god of pharaohs, helping to wrap him.
Yeah.
Well,
Very.
god of funerals, not pharaohs.
Yes. Good job. Here we see another image here. This one is one of my favorites here.
Anubis.
What?
I thought it was pronounced Anubis or Anubis.
No, Anubis. All right. And here we see Osiris watching over the weighing of the heart. So one of the things that happened is you would be judged when you died. And the idea was to weigh your heart against the feather of Ma'at. Now, Ma'at was the goddess of law and justice and truth. And so she had a magical feather. And when they're doing the mummification, they would actually, they would remove all of the organs, but they would remove the heart and they would go mummify that separate and then place the heart back in because they believed you needed the heart at this time. And what would happen, basically, your heart would be weighed against the feather. If your heart was lighter than the feather, and of course this is a magical feather, folks, because obviously we know like a human heart is going to weigh more than a regular feather, but this is all in the afterlife. If your heart was good with your good deeds, you would get to have your good afterlife. The judges would say, yep, you're cool. But if you had done naughty things, if you hadn't done your history homework, if you had Googled your answers instead of just going and trying your best, then your heart would be heavy and then it would be devoured right there in front of you. And then you would have torment for the rest of time. Sounds great, right? Okay.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. You're right.
That's why you should be good.
Well, you should be good to be good, but you know, it helps to be good. Now, as we talked about, mummification is all about preserving the body. That's what we're doing to our chickens. We are going and preserving those chicken legs so that we are able to go and keep them so that your mummy's ka would have a place to stay. All right, it needs to be similar. Like someone asked, are we tearing the skin off the chicken? No, because we want it to look like the chicken that it was before so the ka can recognize it. And they believe that the afterlife was going to be the best time for them. So the way this works is they would cover it with natron for around 70 days or so. You know, and natron was essentially salt and actually like natural like baking soda. So much like what we are doing with our chicken mummies. And after that, they're going to wrap the body with linen, coat it with resin and oils to make it smell nice and to keep it sealed shut so like bugs and stuff don't get in there. By the time we get to the Middle Kingdom, they'll put a mask over it so it looks even more like them. And in this process, they're of course going to remove your organs. Now, organs like the lungs, stomach, intestines, liver, they're going to keep them. They're actually going to put them in these special jars, these canopic jars, which I'm going to show you a picture of right here on the bottom there. And they would put your organs in there, and then those would be buried alongside with you. Now, you might be thinking, Mr. Kennedy, they're forgetting about the brain. But, of course, they thought the brain did nothing. They thought the brain just made boogers. So what they would do is when Pharaoh Samuel died, they would take a long metal rod and shove it up his nose into his brain cavity, and then they would jingle it around to make it like scrambled eggs, and then suck out the brains from the nose. Because they said, this doesn't do anything good. I know.
How would they suck it out?
Like, you just create negative pressure. It's kind of hard to explain, but you can do it. It would mostly leak out. But they would suck out the rest. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
what you want to learn
that's
about,
really gross.
right? And then, as we had mentioned, and the song talked about, you might have a boat in your tomb, and there'd be a statue of you, of course, so that your ka could go onto the boat, travel into the afterlife, and then there you go, right? You might have hieroglyphics of it, and it's just so cool how we are able to learn so much about all of this. Here we see these are statues of servants, which would be in your tomb, so that your servants' kas could go and join you in the afterlife and serve you through all of time. I mean, I'm sure some of the servants were like, man, I really want a break, but nope, sorry, not in Egypt. You go and serve forever. Here we have just, the priests, they would go and read prayers. They would go and stuff amulets and things through your wrapping. Here just once again showing the weighing of the hearts zoomed in a little bit more. And here are the things they would stuff you with. Linen would be used to wrap you. Sawdust, because let's face it, if we remove all of your organs, you're going to look like a deflated balloon. So they wanted to stuff you and fill you with things like Nile mud and frankincense to smell good and onions and beeswax to seal it up to make it so that you would, look like you. That was the whole idea.
Ew.
And then this is what we get for our result, mummies. Now, you can actually go to the Walters Art Gallery. Like I've told you before, it's free. It's in Baltimore, so it's only like 45 minutes away. And they have real mummies. And you can go see them and the canopic jars. But look at this. Seti I. He died over 3,000 years ago. But besides what's going on with his neck, like Yauchis, whatever there is, he only looks like he needs a little lotion. Other than that, he's what he looks like. Queen Taya, she lost an eyeball somehow and looks a little worse for wear. But still, you could see what these people look like. That's how excellent their mummification was. And that's going to be our notes for the day, folks. I hope you enjoyed this little talk about some Egyptian mythology and